Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You're tuned in to Mastering Pet Photography with Impact. Capture authentic portraits, sharpen your skills, and my favorite part, use your camera for good. Hosted by OWC. A huge thank you to them for putting this wonderful event together. I would like to welcome Tamara Lackey. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing wonderful. Thank you for coming on. It's always great when we get to learn stuff about photography. It's even better when there's this aspect of doing good. So I'm really interested to see how you've taken your photography and you're making the world a better place, which is always great.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, Tamara, I'll let you do your thing. I will remind all the viewers, if you guys do have any questions, drop them into the YouTube chat. Tamara, I will see you in a bit for some Q&A.
Okay. That all work okay?
Looks good.
Okay, great. So I'd love to talk today about photographing pets. I tend to photograph quite a lot of rescue pets, but I've also done a number of pet portraits as a professional photographer. And I'm going to start out by just giving you an overview. It's about a 2-minute slideshow of some of the photographs I've taken over the last few years. Woo! That's a lot of photographs. Those are all rescue pets. These, however, are humans. These are the subjects that I was mostly photographing when I first started out. I've been a professional photographer for 21 years. This is what I started with, photographing children and families. And I photographed at 100 weddings, learned so much from photographing weddings, and started doing a lot of writing and presenting and programs. I've written 10 books now, and got to do a series of shows and programs like Chasing Frames, which is just was such a joy to photograph and produce this program with PBS. It's on pbs.org. You can see it. We had a lot of focus on rescue in this show. And this was actually before I started working with Beautiful Together Animal Sanctuary, which I'll share in a little bit. But along the way, I was able to do some really cool photo shoots that were quite a lot of fun. And one of them was for Nikon. I'm a Nikon ambassador, and I have been since 2014, I believe. And they offered this amazing experience for me to photograph 40 puppies with all the gear in the Nikon gear locker. They mailed it all down to North Carolina, where I am in Chapel Hill. We laid out all the gear and photographed a series of portraits over 2 days of just rescue puppies and all the gear. And so here's a little fun clip of what the shoot was like. Pay attention to some of the lighting, because I'm going to talk about it as I go. Some of the lighting I do not only in a studio setup, but also creating little studios as I go that doesn't really take a lot of time or effort, that can give you a lot of impact. But here is photographing 40 puppies with Nikon's entire gear locker.
You're just the cutest.
You're so cute. Today we're doing a dream shoot, photographing 40 adorable puppies with tons of shiny new Nikon gear. The new mirrorless system with all the Z-mount lenses, plus the DSLRs and F-mount lenses too. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh, come here, baby. I lost my subject. I thought it'd be fun to pair the big dog DSLRs with these big old puppies. The best dog in the world. So good.
That's great.
Yeah, I love that one. I'm just getting it again and again. I'm shooting this entire campaign with the Z7, getting super sharp clarity with high resolution captures. These pups are everywhere, heading in pretty much every direction, leaving little puppy accidents and fur wherever they go. Baby. So if you could pull that up and just make it a front light. I wouldn't believe how good you look right now. You wouldn't believe it. Yes! You are so good! I love shooting with the Z system and also using the adapter. That way I can shoot with all my favorite F-mount lenses too. Yep, isn't that a delicious product? It's so good. That's what I wanted you to do and you did it. That's what we wanted and you did it. Okay, that's all we needed. Way to deliver. Look at you. It's just so beautiful. You're just so beautiful. We need one more puppy. Face it the other way. Let's have them all the same way. That one right there, they sniffing? Needs to be over just a fraction.
Don't do anything cute yet. We're not ready for you.
Okay, thank you, puppies. Thank you, everybody. That is a wrap. So this was such a highlight for me in terms of all the campaigns I've been lucky enough to do with Nikon, that it really, I kind of made a joke. I'm like, I feel like I want to just photograph rescue puppies every day. And now I pretty much do and love it. And what I find is part of the impact of this was being able to take animals who might not otherwise, get in front of the lights and the camera and set them up to just kind of really bring out their personality. And in this case, obviously pair them with amazing gear. Then we had to go forward and do it with kittens next, of course. This was with the new little Nikon Z50 that came out. This was adorable. Brought kittens into the studio and set up a similar lighting. So I don't know if you had a chance to see that lighting, but it's basically really simple, continuous daylight balance lights, just kind of in the round. And that is important because these kittens and puppies are everywhere. This is not a set model that you can put down in a spot and say pose. Not dissimilar from photographing children, but having the lights kind of in a round, lower to the ground, and then having a more of a bath of light so that you get great images if they're turning left, right, or whatever the case might be. So that was this general lighting setup that worked really well for them. In 2020, after photographing we'd had this organization Beautiful Together since 2014, but in 2020, we decided to build an animal sanctuary and do so much more of this in earnest. And we found 83 acres of property in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. That was a mix of this beautiful farmland and forest, and started building out the sanctuary in earnest. And along the way, pulled our first set of puppies, that's these 7 puppies, from an animal shelter on January 14th, 2021. We pulled these 7 puppies and their mama who had been hit by a car. And that's how we started. We just started getting fosters and building this animal rescue program within the animal sanctuary. And if you can see here, we had to really spend years doing civil engineering to create the land that we needed to be able to care for these animals. And this is the current state of our welcome and pet adoption center, where we'll be able to house quite a number of rescue puppies and kittens, and we'll have a cat cafe, and there's a lot of plans to come. I'm going to make this mostly about the photography, but this is going to be a space where that we can not only be able to very quickly do a lot of good, but we can have the community come in and meet the animals, and we can also have a really lovely environment to be able to do more photos and videos of these animals. I just photographed this little pup who likes to give hugs. I love this. I was walking past his kennel and I just saw this sign. I thought this was perfect. This is a really good example of what you experience when you're going through a very crowded shelter, at least in North Carolina. In North Carolina, we have the 3rd highest euthanasia rate in the country. And we have these highly adoptable animals that simply for lack of space don't survive. And it's a shame because people are working in shelters are trying so hard, but they're overworked and underfunded, and it's a hard job. So what we find is that taking these great photographs are so impactful. I think we are trying to figure out statistics. Animals get adopted about 70% faster when you get great photographs of them. But this is what you see just walking through a shelter.
Baby. Have her in the Hamlet. She might have a little bit of husky in her.
That is just shaking, 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 shaking.
Why don't you get off your bed?
It's okay.
No,
Sweetheart.
I don't want.
Oh man, she's so scared. She's so scared. Do you think it's okay to pet her, or we don't know yet her behavior?
I wouldn't yet. Let me, I'll get her out. See how she does tomorrow.
It's okay, baby. We're gonna come back for you. We gotta come back this time. Oh my God,
Get
it's
her out
okay,
tomorrow
baby.
and, baby.
I see that all the time, and it never doesn't affect me. It always just, you're just so tuned into their fear and just how scared they are in an environment like that. And it's kind of an extraordinary thing to know that you can change that whole life just by applying a talent that you have. And, you know, being able, whether it's you're starting your own organization or you're helping another or volunteering at a shelter, just taking these photographs has a massive impact on getting these animals into homes. This was a photograph I just took recently as well at a shelter in Western North Carolina that had been hit really hard by the hurricane and the flooding, and they had to empty the shelters because they couldn't keep the animals there, and they had to desperately find a place for these animals to go. And we ended up pulling in, I think, altogether 50 animals from this area, and we still are working with the shelter today. I love how often the cats will do anything to just try to, do a head bump or rub up against you. These two guys, we ended up pulling these two. They had been in a home together, and when the hurricane hit, they were okay after the initial hit of the hurricane, but then when they all lost power, there was an electrical issue, and their house actually went up in flames, and they had to leave and drop the pets off at the shelter. There's so many stories like this. It's very interesting going through an animal shelter because we're trying to help them, but the stories of what the people are going through when these animals, find their ways into shelters, a significant number of them are involuntarily giving up their animals. But we pulled these two out. Just thought this was an amazing angle because there just happened to be this opening in the bars. It was just kind of beat up a little bit. And him looking through. This photography wise, this was shot with a really shallow depth of field, but I shot with the we'll talk a little bit about gear next, but I shot with a 24-70 millimeter lens, which is not an incredibly shallow depth of field lens. It was the f4 lens, but shooting really close to this puppy and him leaning forward a little bit to see what I was all about allowed us to have this really shallow depth of field around him. This again, you see this over and over again, not just in the shelters, but also in the little medical wards. This juxtaposition of life in this sheltered, caged areas. I was walking through a shelter here in Raleigh area, and just looked over and I saw this little fluffy supermodel baby who really needed to get cleaned up and dewormed and all the things that you need to do. And then we ended up pulling all of them later, but I thought it's just stunning the beauty you see as you walk through these shelters. And these two images I think are a really good precursor to what I think is so impactful about being able to take good pet portraits. The image on the top left was the image that we got as the organization from the shelter of the dog that needed to be rescued. And that's all we had to go off of because they were a couple hours away. And then we just try to find fosters, but you can look at this dog and say, I bet we're going to, be able to get an animal out that will be highly adoptable. We pulled the animal. This is me actually in the shower, just shooting this with my mobile phone. And but you get a sense of how what kind of shape this dog was in. 25-pound Great Pyrenees. If you're familiar with the breed of Great Pyrenees, these are 100-pound dogs. And was disguised with some fluff because as you pet her, it was just pure bone everywhere, the skeleton and the hip bones and everything. Super sweet girl and just really, really fearful. But literally a week later, she had gained 4 pounds, was playful, was clearly on the way to being healed. And I did a photo shoot, and this is the same dog. This was a week later. Zara was her name. She was literally just adopted last week. This is this before and after. I'd showed her photographs in the slideshow at the very beginning. And I have them on Instagram, all 10 images if you want to see more. But to me, this is the difference between what we can do if we can lend our time and our talents to shelter pets. Here's a couple more images, not bad images. These were the images we got of this dog, Rena. This was a few weeks ago, actually. And this is the portrait I took right after we got her out of the shelter and got her into our sanctuary vet clinic. You can obviously see those eyes needed to be highlighted. They're so stunning. I think that was listed as maybe a husky mix. I think she's really a German Shepherd. Maybe there's some breed experts out there who can tell me. Took her out into the field. We're going to talk a little bit later about composition. This is one of my favorite kind of little composition tricks with animals is to tuck them into grassy areas. I think it's such a sweet, compelling look, especially if you've just pulled them out of a concrete kennel area. This image was shot with my Z6 II, my Nikon Z6 II mirrorless camera. I'm sorry, Z6 III, Nikon Z6 III mirrorless camera, and my 85, also the Z85 1.2 lens. Shot at a very shallow depth of field and just trying to highlight the pop of color in her gorgeous eyes and how it kind of blends with the environment. And this was literally this morning. This was a few hours ago, another dog that we just pulled out of the shelter. This also is just another, example based on everything I just shared with you. What I know next will happen is we just pulled this dog. She's absolutely terrified. Give her a week and we're going to have a show dog. I'm going to photograph her in a week and we're going to have show dog images. But for right now, this is how she is acting. I took the audio off because you just mostly hear me saying over and over again, "You're such a good girl." But she is so afraid that she does this like little, I guess, army crawl, commando crawl, and then just tries to hide in the bushes. These two bushes are just so used by dogs. It's crazy. She sat there for quite a while. And then this is how she crawled out all the way until like we eventually got her to the car. But she wanted to be loved. She wanted the hugs. She wanted to snuggle up, but she was so scared of something happening to her. And then she would just sit there for a while and then start trembling again. And then, we'd slowly eat, and just a gorgeous dog. And she's going to make an incredible pet one day, but she just has to get past, this phase of terror. We just see it all the time. Let's talk a little bit about the photography gear. I'll talk about the gear I use and then give some suggestions based on if you're looking to get different gear. But I will say that what's really interesting is that I just had this article come out with Nikon. Again, everything's just happened. This was, I think, a week ago, where it was an article they did on photographing wildlife. I photographed grizzly bears with Christy Odom, my fellow Nikon ambassador in Alaska. It was amazing. And this whole article was about the different lenses that you choose, which was really different than another shoot I did for Nikon for the Z30, with a whole different set of lenses where we photographed kids and kittens. So I went from Alaska to a week later photographing kids and kittens with completely different gear kit. But the Nikon Z30 is a new camera, and there's a number of equivalents. I can't say equivalent because I love Nikon, but other cameras that I think are such strikingly good cameras, and it's kind of shocking for the price point. I want to say this camera is something like, I don't want to get it wrong, $500-600. I'm sure we'll be able to check this. And certainly under $1,000. And the quality of these images is just so strong. And it's a super lightweight camera. You can, tuck it in your pocket. Something like this is great if you are trying to get great portraits of animals, and that you can use lenses, switch out the lenses as you need. One of the biggest tips I can give you in terms of photographing is using, if you are going to be using as in the Z lenses, is using the LCD, the tilt and swivels, the very angled lenses that you can kind of move it all around and put your camera wherever you need to put your camera and still see the image without making yourself too close to the animal that might be more than they want. It might be uncomfortable for them if you're getting really, really close with your eye behind the viewfinder, right in there. Being able to have some flexibility and give the animal some space until they get to know you a little better, but still get these great close-up portraits. This is a wonderful tool for that. These are some other images we photographed with these kids and kittens with the Z30. It was really fun, this big pop of color. The photography for good element, I think what's interesting is that, I showed you several campaigns in a row that were really fun, and I really enjoyed using the gear. The difference in terms of what I'm using for wildlife or people and pet portraits is, these different lens sets. So for people and portraits, I'm typically using the 2470, the f4 lens. Something in that 2470 is incredible, everyday workhorse lens. But the f4 is also at $1,000 and under lens. And I've loved that lens since the very first time I did a campaign with it and learned everything about it. And that lens is with me everywhere. And then the 85-1.2 is any sort of lens that has this incredible optic quality where you have a very, very shallow depth of field, is perfect for photographing rescue pets, because you're often in really messy environments. You're in unattractive environments, and you have to get a lot of stuff out of focus. And that's a really big difference between when I'm taking a pet portrait for a client or for a campaign where I can create the background, I can create the set. That is very often not what I'm doing. And I'll show you a little bit later what I mean by very messy backgrounds. But shooting at that really shallow depth of field and finding the balance between how close you want to photograph to your subject and how far you want them from anything around them helps to just melt everything out of the background except for the subject you want to show. The 70-200 lens, that longer lens, is just a joy to shoot with, because you can get incredible fast action shooting. I'll show you some of those images next. And then for wildlife, of course, we're shooting with much longer lenses, the 800, the 100 to 400. Those are really fun lenses to use as well. The Z8 and the Z6 III are the two cameras I'm using the most. And with rescue pets, it's the Z6 III a lot of the time, like most of the time. And then the other big part of gear, and OWC is very, very kindly sponsoring this, so thank you. The Atlas Ultra memory cards. I use these 1 terabyte memory cards, and I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you're shooting with your camera and something amazing happens and you go to do a burst frame, get a bunch of shots at once, and it starts buffering, it slows down, it makes you wait, and then the best shot ever is gone. These cards, I never ever have that experience. Like literally have never had these cards stop while I'm getting raw files and a whole big series of them. So they're pretty extraordinary for that. And I love the Envoy Pro drives. That's how small that 2 terabyte, that one on the right, I wrote gig. Those are terabyte. Those SSD drives are 4 terabyte and 2 terabyte drives. Oh my gosh, we'll see if post we can fix something here. But they are, it is that tiny in your hand, a 2 terabyte drive. It's pretty extraordinary. So these are products I use all the time. So I'm going to talk about a couple things that I like to think about when I am photographing animals. I'm gonna pop around a little bit here, in and out, which kind of goes with my brain and goes with rescuing animals, because you are at any given time kind of going everywhere and responding to what you're seeing. We are pulling animals all the time. In fact, 2 dogs just showed up from a shelter a few minutes ago, and so what I'm finding is I'm often, I just have the camera with me and I shoot as I go, but I'm looking for things that I can do. This was the little kitten I showed you earlier, who was a big floofy mess in the shelter. We pulled her out, and this is just simply on a little windowsill in a bedroom. Wanted to really emphasize this beautiful face in the reflection, but also using some color. These are just a rim of fairy lights that are pink fairy lights in the background, and we just move them closer to have this little rim of light. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but when I showed this to my teenage daughter, she said, "Oh my God, Mom, it's amazing. It looks like AI," which I think is a scary thing. I was like, "Oh, that's it. You were there when I photographed it though." And she's like, "I know, but I think everyone else is going to think it's AI." Kind of scary. Bringing in color. This was a mama pup, and we had pulled this mama with her 4 little puppies that were very young. And they had just come in from a shelter, and I just had all these pink noses, every one of these little puppies. So we pulled in the pink and the red blankets to take the shot. And when I was initially going to take this photograph, envision, if you will, I had a very beige blanket, just kind of a utility blanket down. And if you think about this image with a utility blanket versus just this soft, color that really brings in this sweet pinkness of these little noses, you really can see the difference it makes. Another thing, we photographed this cat at, this was for a contest. We did a fundraising contest and photographed this cat just on a outside porch, plexiglass top table. Tried to pull back enough to get those paws in the full reflection, and then change the angle so we had these just little pops of color around her, versus where it originally had been just with the white in the background, which wasn't nearly as interesting. Same thing, being able to pull in some color. There's a lot of orangeness to this little rescue pup's fur. Such a cute little pup. This is, wearing bright colors. I am often asking people to hold these puppies and kittens. And we do rescue a lot of puppies and kittens, and you'll find a lot of them in animal shelters. And even though they have a really good chance of getting adopted, they're also the ones that most need to be pulled out because they're very vulnerable, especially in our state. They're very vulnerable to outbreaks of diseases. If something goes wrong, or the puppies or kittens are too young to care for and the shelter staff needs to leave, they're not going to leave the animals there to suffer. They unfortunately may have to euthanize by end of day, just out of mercy for the animal, because there's no other option. And so, we try really hard to make more space as much as we can for the puppies and kittens, just for those reasons. Let's talk a little bit about lighting, studio lighting. So this is, I would say at this point, a very small percentage of my shots are taken in the studio. And in fact, we're going to be building out this whole new space at the sanctuary just to be able to photograph the rescue pets more often. But this is an example where we had flex lights, the Westcott flex lights in this shot. And we were daylight balanced images, and we had set the lights up so we'd really get this pop of catch light that you see, those white specular highlights in the eyes. And this puppy was just, we were playing, and he would tuck his head under and then just tuck back up. And that was almost like peekaboo with babies. It was very cute. But this is a nice example of where you can have a really controlled setting, because you can control everything with the lights, which is not what is possible most of the time. But I'm going to show you some ways that we work around that. Same sort of situation. We had a gray backdrop come down. We placed the chair in a certain way, and then I think it took about 10 times to get him to keep his paws there for long enough to get a shot. We just kept kind of separating them to get kind of an interesting pose. This is Dasher. This is just kind of a fun element where we wanted to show this bigger dog being a smaller part of the frame, just more of an element of this larger world, which I think a lot of animals feel, especially these rescue animals. And this one is very simple. This was actually on a table that was on the edge of my studio, that looking out the window, shot at I think a f1.2, extremely shallow depth of field. And so everything in the background is just, that's actually a road right there, not a highway, but a very busy road. But it just all became the softness of the trees behind it, shooting at this depth of field, and then just lighting it with these continuous lights. You can actually see them in his eyes. Cute little French bulldog puppy. This one is probably one of my most precisely lit photographs of this cat, Clifford, who we read about on Craigslist, that was available for 5 weeks, giving away cats. That's always concerning when you read that. But Clifford, beautiful Russian blue cat. This is in our studio. And this was about, I think, 7 lights, just because he had gray hair, but it was a little thicker, and it was surprisingly hard to get the light in there. So we had to use extra lighting, and we kept shifting it, and he kept moving. So that's the other thing about every single one of these subjects. They keep moving, unless you can get them asleep, which I have a whole section about in just a minute. But in this case, I asked my husband, Steve, to hold Clifford from the bottom in the chair, behind the chair. So that's just like a dining room chair sort of thing with a round top. And I wanted it composed this way, specifically where he would be this like lovely, like round element in the bottom left third of this frame, this tall frame. So Steve was underneath him, holding him up. And this was the image we got, because all he did the whole time was fight it. And this was about 45 minutes to get one image where he would just chill enough. His paws weren't extended. He wasn't trying, he's a semi-feral cat for a while, where he wasn't trying to, disappear. And so the shot was so worth it. And it took this long, but I don't think my husband will ever do this assisting job again. So what I'm doing a lot now, because of just so many run and gun situations, I do a lot of teaching with Joe McNally, who, if you don't know him, both Christy Odom and Joe McNally, I teach with both of them. And if you don't know them, you should definitely check them out. They do amazing work. But Joe is legendary, and he always refers to a run and gun setups. And I just realized I've picked up that term and I use it all the time now. But that is what this is, where you are you're in a situation and whatever is there, you've got to make it work. So I try to create a studio as best I can. Sometimes it's something as simple as a solution like this. So on the left here, you'll see this is a photo box. It's a light box. People use it for product shots. They use it for sometimes larger food photography. This is, I just pulled a clip from Instagram, my Instagram page, but this is what it looks like. You just set it up. You've got this little plastic backdrop. You've got the lights in there. You put the animal in there and they're just bathed in this light. It's almost like a 360 light, except for that opening at the front, which you can light. You can tuck a light right there as well. And it's absolutely fantastic for, we just pulled 8 puppies and we have to quickly get them photographed, and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Truly, it's almost a little bit of a production set, but it's quite useful for this sort of thing. And if you had something like this, and it's not that expensive, you could actually bring it to rescues or shelters or situations like that, and help pretty briskly too. This is another photograph I took of a little one of our contest winners, of a little pet. Oh, I should gecko? I think it's a gecko. Someone's going to correct me. Very cute, but we made a little set inside of that little light box. And even just the silliness of cats, you can change the backgrounds. You can have a white, a gray, a black, a red, etc. Just kind of plopping a cat in there and them trying to figure out what is going on. It's really fun. Here's another really good example of where you can create a studio anywhere. These are just nothing more than these simple like boards that you place together. You can find a million of these little backdrops that you can buy, the papers you can buy that you just lay down and get the shot you want. I am just here photographing. I think that this is the, I think shooting there with the Z, I think that might've been the Z6. I don't know, actually, but I've got this little kitten and the mama and the babies that we're fostering. This is Mama Bonnie and all her kittens. And I just plopped that down there and put in a blanket and, just take those shots just like that. And that's how I get this shot. I mean, it's really simple. And as you can tell back there, this was a crowded room. We had to move a lot of things through. We had a number of different pets we were all fostering at the same time. But you get these really clean, pretty images that make a huge difference. I mentioned earlier what a significant difference it makes, that having a kitten in care with your fosters for 2 weeks versus 8 weeks. Versus 6 months versus 9 months. I mean, it can really extend if people have no way to know what these animals look like, what their personalities are like. the photography has a huge impact. This is another example, just pulling a light in that you can plug anywhere and just plop to the next room, just making a studio where you go. This is exactly the setup I used here with this little kitten. I just took that light, plopped it behind me, got the shot, and that's it. I mean, really, really simple. There's a window behind the kitten. So we've got some nice light coming in from the back. We've got the front light coming in to light up those eyes. And it's just a clean, simple photograph, and it can be really done anywhere. So things to look for when you're photographing pets. I know one of the things I hear from people a lot is it's so hard to photograph this animal or my pet, or I want to take photographs of my parents' pets and I can just never get a good angle. They're always running around. Wait for them to fall asleep. I wouldn't go as far as say drug them. I wouldn't say that, but wait for them to fall asleep because they are often very malleable this way. This is a perfect example of an image I photographed. You can see on the left exactly the setup. That is the exact kitten I was photographing. And I think I just tucked the little blanket over her a little bit, but it's just shooting top down. I'm just using window light there. That's it. And using a 24-70 lens. And then I took kitten after kitten and brought them in when they weren't climbing on me. You can just, put them together, position them. It's almost like Play-Doh. You can, as long as they're sleepy enough, you can get them in whatever position you want. This is another, this was actually not part of one of my fosters. This was a shoot I did for Nikon, actually. This beautiful Great Dane puppy. But, trying to get images, the best images were when, he was finally falling asleep and kind of being done with us, clearly. Same thing, putting a bunch of puppies together and most of them are sleeping. And then, one kind of looks up. It's just this kind of image is really compelling when you start photographing them from different angles and different puppies look up. You really, it says a lot about the one image that you've got. So if an adopter is interested and you show them this image of this puppy looks special. They are special, but they look like they stand out, and you kind of go around and get something where there's an entire litter together and one of them is looking at the camera, and that's the one you position to the adopter. And it's just like, it has a big psychological difference because it feels like, that one is in focus and that's the one I'm drawn to. Sleeping. You can kind of do anything. This one really cracks me up. I didn't actually do this. I just walked up and found the kitten like this. I thought it was hilarious, but you can move them around. I think this was gratuitous. This was too much. I actually did not turn this in, but I thought to myself, gosh, what kind of product shots could you do with kittens this asleep? Just kind of fun. So the other thing to look for is weirdness, personality quirks. When animals are getting adopted, and the two things that matter in terms of catching people's eye is, one, the photograph makes a huge difference. If you can get video, that's awesome. But the bio, the little read up on the animal, and getting a photograph that shows something that's weird about them and pairing that with something quirky in the bio is kind of a great recipe for getting animals to move quickly. So whether it's just something silly, like you caught them mid yawn, but it looks like they're laughing, a weird sleeping position. Again, you can do anything you want with kittens, but it's amazing how often they do that weirdness on their own. Just the silly laying out, the tongue out on their back. That's actually one of my favorite kind of images to get. This kitten just sat this way. This was photographed in our studio. Just this beautiful little kitten who tucked that third leg in all the time. Butterscotch was this kitten's name. Just sat that way. It was so funny. Oops, messed that one up. Oh, and then this is bath time. So this is technically I don't love this shot because it was steamy and the lens got kind of steamed, and so it's a little bit of a soft lens, but it's hilarious. This dog just trying to get out and save himself. Things to make happen. Action shots go a long way in terms of catching people's eyes. This is a pup that I photographed actually for part of Chasing Frames, I think. Can't remember. But just doing this agility course was so cool. This kind of sharpness out at the sanctuary, just literally running and chasing frisbees, balls, anything. This dog, I have 50 different images that I love from just 2 hours of this dog running everywhere. I absolutely loved it. These images are shot with a 70 to 200 lens at a 2.8. And so the closer I am to the dog, the farther they are from the background, the more everything goes soft. You have this action that's helping as well. So you have these sharp eyes and everything else is soft. This pit bull who tried really hard to be just as sleek, but as hard as he could run, he couldn't get most of his body mass off the ground, but sure was happy about the effort. And even like just the little puppies, how they zig and zag and you've got all the feet off the ground is so, so cute. Experiences. So, you know, being able to document things. So it's not just portraits, but things that are happening. We've had quite a number of animals that we pull out of the shelter and they are so pregnant. They are giving birth like immediately. Every once in a while, they're saying they're about to pop, they're going to give birth in an hour. And it actually takes like 2 more weeks. And you're like, what? But these puppies were all born. The mama was a cane Corso. And we had actually held her only for a weekend, but it was a really tough weekend because she was kind of right at the end stage of her pregnancy. We knew she was going to be giving birth soon, but she made quite a mess in our garage. And I remember having this moment watching my husband helping clean up afterwards. And he's like, save lives, they said. It'll feel good. It's meaningful, they said. He wasn't really feeling it. But watching these babies be born, you know, it is a miracle. It's extraordinary. And being able to intercept it right before they're born in the shelter where they are so much more susceptible to disease and germs and viruses and such is a pretty wonderful thing. Like when you're getting that right in time. But was able to photograph every single one of these animals right from the start. And when you can do something like this and share an experience, you are able to hook people into the story, and telling stories about these animals as they are growing or as they're with your rescue is another fantastic way to get them to be adopted that much faster. Any sort of experiences that you may have with your animals, just kind of more documentary style, is really cool. Here's another cat, Keachel, gave birth to 8 kittens. This is real time giving birth. I love these cuddle puddles. These they all snuggle up as tight as possible. This I photographed, I think this was the 105 1.4 lens, and shot this with an adapter at the extreme, shallow depth of field of a 1.4. And then just, every day. So documenting animals together, interacting, whether it's mamas with puppies and cats with kittens, several animals meeting each other for the first time, just plopping down and just capturing what's happening. You end up coming away with just such amazing images. People are always asking, as it relates to photography, what do you need to do? What is the trick? Patience is a lot of it. Just taking your time. The type of composition, there's different types of composition that may make for great portraits, but aren't the same ones you'd use for, we want to get someone to feel connected to this animal. This tilted down composition, especially when you have these animals with different color eyes or just really interesting eyes, which we seem to see a lot of in rescue. It's really interesting. But, being able to photograph them in a way where, whatever you are photographing, whatever is closest to the lens appears larger. And this is a really complimentary way to photograph an animal, but especially one that you want somebody to feel connected to, being really close to them, the lens, and having the eyes, large like that. I do this a lot over and over again, especially when you've got really fun elements like this dog's ears on the left that are just like that. Or this expression on the right where you just, I mean, it's just, you just have a tagline coming out, take me home. Even if it's a quick snap, just trying from that angle makes such a difference. I love photographing outside, tucked in grass, animals that are in the outside. And know this bear cub who I photographed in Alaska is not a rescue pet from North Carolina, but it struck me how when I was in Alaska, I'm always looking for this kind of image, and I got to see it actually for itself in the wild. But I'm often trying to get an angle where I'm shooting a little bit lower. They're tucked in the grass, and they're just, I showed you this image earlier of this dog who just got adopted. I just love this feel, and it works for cats too. Just a note of caution when you're photographing cats, if you ever do go outside, just look for hawks, make sure you're protected, be in a really tight, small space. I'm just going to have to say all that because that makes me so nervous. In this case, all those things were happening, and it was just a very shallow depth of field and kind of a lovely outside sunny day with grass all around and little protectors right next to this tiny kitten. Elements of people, emphasis here on elements. So even though we like showing animals with people, and those are great for portraits, I have a lot of portraits of people and animals together. Just sometimes bringing in a small element, that just is interesting. It shows a connection. The focus is still very much on the animal, on the pet. But it's just kind of a fun thing, whether they're being pet or positioned or held a certain way, like a soft out of focus, just someone is there and is caring for this animal. Those are just really meaningful, lovely little elements to have in your portraits. So obviously this is also a bear, but I'm always shocked when I'm photographing wildlife and how often I'm seeing the same thing with domestic animals. I just feel like I see all the time this over and over again. This is a pup bear that we rescued from a shelter here, and we named him Bear because he reminded me so much of a bear. It's like just side by side, like you just see these things on repeat. I don't know. I think I maybe looked at too many bears, but it looks so much like the same animal to me. Anyway, I know that was a lot to cover in a relatively short amount of time, but this is where you can find me to learn more. I'm going to stick around for any questions that may have come in, and I hope that was a helpful presentation.
Thank you so much, Tamara. That was a lot of information. You got through that quick.
Yeah, was it too much information?
No. The more information, the better.
Okay,
I'll jump right into the questions. We do have the questions rolling in. Jenny is said, I tried to take a couple of pictures of some animals. The dogs are really afraid of the camera. Any tips to help them overcome their fear?
Yes, that's a great question and something I see a lot. Obviously one of the easiest things to do is shoot with a much longer lens from farther away and just kind of take yourself out of their energy field. I always let bigger dogs, especially, smell the camera. I bring the camera over to them and let them sniff it for a while. And just like, sometimes you just place it right there and just walk away for a little bit. And it just removes this element of like, what is that strange thing? And it's large and it's pointing at me. I actually just photographed a shepherd, large 2-year-old shepherd, just like a few days, everything's just happened. But I pulled out my camera and I was in a hurry and I just lifted it. And it was just the whole thing, ears back, because it looks like it could be something scary. So yeah, I always make sure to have them sniff it, hold it there for a little bit. And that makes a big difference. Or hold the camera away from your body, get their attention, and then be able to use a swivel screen or something like that. Makes a difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about the mannerisms, like ears down. Even if it's just not them sitting there, that can make the difference, especially certain breeds. It's like, you want the ears at attention. Pam is asking, do you use continuous or single focus on those such as in the product boxes, and what for those in motion? Do you use back button focus, or do you tap on the screen and use the touch screen?
All of the above. So I use single point focus for the product shots. Those were all shot with single point focus, but that was also before the animal eye detect focus came out, which I'm obsessed with and I use all the time. And I know that there's functions of that in various cameras called different things, but I have that on most of the time. So my favorite settings are an autofocus 3D continuous with animal eye detect focus, which gives me, a lot of, especially when the animals are in motion, it's extraordinarily precise. So I use that for those. And then a single shot for any sort of like, if an animal's in a studio or just sitting there, or products or such, then I will use just the single focus button. The other element just to add is that if I'm outside with an animal and there's any sort of like they're near trees or something is moving back and forth, I'll put the focus on the animal in single shot so it's not distracted by the movement.
If you're photographing multiple animals, is it an issue? Does it do the same thing like when you put face detect on for people and sometimes it'll jump back and forth? And if you don't have it locked in or registered, that's an issue. How do you handle that?
Yeah. So, and I do a lot of groups of animals and then I'll just do the focuses on the 2 or 3 in the middle. And then I will just make sure my f-stop is dialed in for the amount of animals. Right. So I try to keep it a tight, shallow depth of field. So if I've got, a set of 8 puppies in front of me, I'm probably going to be at like an f4, but I'm making sure I'm far enough away that that field of focus is covering all of them, even if it jumps.
Okay. How do you normally, what is your normal f-stop? Are you a wide open shooter or do you like it more stop down generally?
I tend to have to shoot very shallow because I'm usually in very distractible areas, like a lot of mess. So I'm usually trying to get rid of everything else around. Shut this down. Somebody's telling me that.
It's a question coming in.
It's for me. So I tend to shoot a lot of shallow, but that said, the amount of times that you lose so much impact if you're not showing the entire coat or all the fur, sometimes what makes this animal so appealing is how just how bonkers the markings are on the animal, and you don't want to lose that.
Yeah, I did notice on some of them it was like you have the eyes locked in, but the shallow depth of field plays into like the fluffiness where it's almost like it just melts away in and the texture kind of blends in with the blur.
It looks creamy optics. I love that. That's the 85 1.2 lens is just gorgeous. Yeah,
it doesn't get any better than that. Robin is asking, says, I really hate doing studio photos. I prefer natural light, natural actions, and expressions, especially with animals and children. What are your suggestions for lifestyle photos of animals?
So in terms of like where to go
outside the studio, is there any tips you have, or do you keep it, if you're, somebody wants their pet photographed, is it kind of like how when you do it with people, it's like, okay, the kid is going to be, let's keep it to places that they're comfortable with, places that they know, or is it like, do you go to the park where it's a nice backdrop, but they might not be familiar with it?
Yeah. Excellent question. And I cannot even, I can't overstate how much photographing children and photographing animals is the same, like the same sort of things. Like they all, you kind of get a sense of different personalities really quickly with animals, just like you do with children. There are some animals that will come alive in a park situation. Like they'll be excited, their tongue will be hanging out and they'll love it. And there's other animals that will be like that one I showed you from this morning, that will pancake to the ground, will be terrified of everything. So that same dog that we just had here, a foster dog. So I'm talking about the one that Army crawled out in a quiet room with the lights low, was smiling and, tongue out and fine. The second he went outside, shut down. And so part of that is getting a read on the personality of the animal, and knowing where the best place is to go. I think probably the safest bet is to go to an environment where there aren't other animals or people, and you've got some sort of outside element because they can be more relaxed. And if you're photographing pets a lot, doing a bit of a study on animal body language is hugely impactful, because what you might look at and say, oh, that's a great image. Somebody else might be like, but she's terrified, and you're like, but it's well lit. Like, but she's terrified. So, trying to make sure that you are, that you're looking for those little elements. And then even if you can't change those things in terms of the animal's body language, you can crop accordingly.
That's such a great point. You don't think about that. Especially photographers, think of it in terms of, is it composed right? Is it lit right?
Right.
But the
Yeah.
more you
Yeah.
know about, and especially the market for who is going to be looking at these animals, it's
Right.
a lot of people know about the different breeds.
Mm.
That being said, are you learning about particular breeds? Are you talking to, say you're shooting for an adoption agency or fostering? Are you talking to them and saying, hey, is there anything I should know about this particular animal that will help me capture it better?
Yeah, I mean, well, about almost every single animal I've shown in this entire presentation are rescue animals, right? So they're all out of shelters or inhumane situations where we pulled them in. And so breed is a very murky word because they're mostly
They're
a
all
lot,
over the
right?
place. Yeah.
But just often like this dog leads with shepherd or this dog leads with lab or whatever the case might be. And there are elements that seem to be pretty consistent. Like a Great Pyrenees is a beautiful, friendly, stubborn dog, right? And so I'm not going to try to get that dog to do something brand new for the first time because I know that's going to be a whole process involved. So yeah, in that regard, you do get a sense of it. You do get a sense of just understanding some of the breeds that way. That definitely makes a difference. But you
What
can get a
about
sense too if you're taking pet portraits. You can ask the owner, tell me more about the personality, best time of day to photograph them. When are they calm down? When are they just hyper? Like, yeah, the last time you want to photograph a pet is when they've been home alone all day and you're walking in the door 5 hours later with a camera and they're going crazy. Like you're setting yourself up to fail.
I swear, if we didn't say pets throughout this, it really could have been about photographing babies. This entire thing, everything
Yes.
sounds the exact
Yes.
same.
Yes. Yeah. So true.
Now, how do they handle flash? I know we've had a macro photographer on who's like, insects aren't afraid of flash. It doesn't unhinge them. Are dogs and cats the same way, or is it based on the particular animal? How do they generally handle that?
Generally, because I use my Profoto strobes, like generally, I don't usually have a problem, but keep in mind, I'm usually, aware that I'm getting a chunk of animals that are coming to me that are just scared and they're going to
Mm.
be scared. And a flash of light is going to be scary and it's going to shut them down. So when I know that's the personality of the dog or cat I'll be photographing, I'll tend to steer away from the strobes for that reason. But when they're comfortable, if they're an everyday, owned pet or a family member or something, I don't have a problem with the strobes. Yeah.
Interesting. Tamara, I want to thank you again. This was a wealth of information. You clearly are super experienced in this, and that helps all of our viewers out there because this is not the one thing that kids have that dogs don't is kids can at least talk and relay information. Pets, you're on your own. You got to figure it out.
Yeah. True.
Now, huge thank you to you again. We did drop the links, so please go throw Tamara a follow. Check out her website. If you guys do have any questions, don't bother her, right? But hit her up.
Yeah, bother me. Yeah.
There you go. Tamara, huge thank you to you. Of course, the OWC team. Thank you guys again for making this happen. To all of our viewers out there, thank you for tuning in. We can't do it without all of you. But alas, another edition of the B&H Event Space now in the books. Catch y'all next time.
Thank you.